Good evening. This is Cynthia from cynscraftingworld. Welcome to my next story, which is The Mystery of Choice by Robert W. Chambers, written in 1897. Chapter 1. The Purple Emperor. Un souvenir heureux est peut-être sur terre plus vrai que le bonheur. The Purple Emperor watched me in silence. I cast again, spinning out 6 feet more of waterproof silk, and as the line hissed through the air far across the pool, I saw my 3 files far on the water like drifting thistledown. The Purple Emperor sneered. "You see," he said, "I am right. There is not a trout in Brittany that will rise to a tailed fly." "They do in America," I replied. "Zut for America," observed the Purple Emperor. "And trout take a tailed fly in England," I insisted sharply. "Now do I care what things or people do in England?" demanded the Purple Emperor. "You don't care for anything except yourself and your wriggling caterpillars," I said, more annoyed than I had been yet. The Purple Emperor sniffed. His broad, hairless, sunburnt features bore that obstinate expression which always irritated me. Perhaps the manner in which he wore his hat intensified the irritation, for the flapping brim rested on both ears, and the 2 little velvet ribbons which hung from the silver buckle in front wiggled and fluttered with every trivial breeze. His cunning eyes and sharp-pointed nose were out of all keeping with his fat red face. When he met my eye, he chuckled. "I know more about insects than any man in Morbihan, or Finistère either, for that matter," he said. "The Red Admiral knows as much as you do," I retorted. "He doesn't," replied the Purple Emperor angrily. "And his collection of butterflies is twice as large as yours," I added, moving down the stream to a spot directly opposite him. "It is it?" sneered the Purple Emperor. "Well, let me tell you, Monsieur Darel, in all the collection he hasn't a single specimen of that magnificent butterfly, Apatura iris, commonly known as the Purple Emperor." "Everybody in Brittany knows that," I said, casting across the sparkling water. "But just because you happen to be the only man who ever captured a Purple Emperor in Morbihan, it doesn't follow that you are in authority on sea trout flies. Why do you say that Breton sea trout won't touch a tailed fly?" "It's so," he replied. "Why? There are plenty of mayflies about the stream." "Let 'em fly," snarled the Public Emperor. "You won't see a trout touch 'em." My arm was aching, but I grasped my split bamboo more firmly and, half turning, waded out into the stream and began to whip the ripples at the head of the pool. A great green dragonfly came drifting by on the summer breeze and hung a moment above the pool, glittering like an emerald. "There's a chance. Where's your butterfly net?" I called across the stream. "What for? That dragonfly? I've got dozens. Annex, Junius, Drury, characteristic, anal angle of posterior wings in male, round, thorax marked with—" "That will do," I said fiercely. "Can't I point out an insect in the air without this burst of erudition? Can you tell me in simple everyday French what this little fly is, this one flitting over the eel grass here beside me? See, it has fallen on the water." "Huh!" sneered the Purple Emperor. "That's a Linobia annulus." "What's that?" I demanded. Before he could answer, there came a heavy splash in the pool with the fly, and the fly disappeared. "Hee," tittered the Purple Emperor. "Didn't I tell you the fish knew their business? That was a sea trout. I hope you didn't get him." He gathered up his butterfly net collecting box, chloroform bottle, and cyanide jar. Then he rose, swung the box over his shoulder, stuffed the poison bottles into the pockets of his silver-buttoned velvet coat, and lighted his pipe. This latter operation was a demoralizing spectacle, for the Purple Emperor, like all Breton peasants, smoked one of those microscopical Breton pipes, which requires 10 minutes to find, 10 minutes to fill, 10 minutes to light, and 10 seconds to finish. With true Breton stolidity, he went through his solemn rite, blew 3 puffs of smoke into the air, scratched his pointed nose reflectively, and waddled away, calling back an ironical "Au revoir and bad luck to you all, Yankees." I watched him out of sight, thinking sadly of the young girl whose life he made a hell on earth. Liz Trevec, his niece. She never admitted it, but we all knew what the black and blue marks meant on her soft round arm, and it made me sick to see the look of fear come into her eyes when the Purple Emperor waddled into the cafe of the Groix Inn. It was commonly said that he half-starved her. This she denied. Marie Joseph and fine Lilocard had seen him strike her the day after the pardon of the brides because she had liberated 3 bullfinches, which he had limed the day before. I asked Liz if this were true, and she refused to speak to me for the rest of the week. There was nothing to do about it. If the Purple Emperor had not been avaricious, I should never have seen Liz at all. But he could not resist the 30 francs a week which I offered him, and Liz posed for me all day long, happy as a linnet in a pink thorn hedge. Nevertheless, the Purple Emperor hated me and constantly threatened to send Liz back to her dreary flax spinning. He was suspicious too, and when he gulped down a single glass of cider, which proves fatal to the sobriety of most Bretons, he would pound the long discolored oaken table and roar curses on me, and Yves Terek, and on the Red Admiral. We were the 3 objects in the world which he most hated. Me, because I was a foreigner, and didn't care a rap for him and his butterflies, and the Red Admiral, because he was a rival entomologist. He had other reasons for hating Terek. The Red Admiral, a little wizened wretch, and with a badly adjusted glass eye and a passion for brandy, took his name from a butterfly which predominated in his collection. This butterfly, commonly known as amateurs as the Red Admiral, and to entomologists as Vanessa Atlanta, had been the occasion of scandal among the entomologists of France and Brittany. For the Red Admiral had taken one of these common insects, dyed it bright yellow, and by the aid of chemicals, and palmed it off on a credulous collector as a South African species, absolutely unique. The 50 francs which he gained by this rascality were, however, absorbed in a suit for damages bought by the outraged amateur a month later, and when he had sat on the Quimperle jail for a month, he reappeared in the little village of St. Gildas, soured, thirsty, and burning for revenge. Of course, we named him the Red Admiral, and he accepted the name with suppressed fury. The Purple Emperor, on the other hand, had gained his imperial title legitimately, for it was an undisputed fact that the only specimen of that beautiful butterfly, Apatura iris, or the Purple Emperor as it is called by amateurs, the only specimen that had ever been taken in Finistère or in Morbihan, was captured and brought home alive by Joseph Marie Glonec, and ever afterward to be known as the Purple Emperor. When the capture of this rare butterfly became known, the Red Admiral nearly went crazy. Every day for a week he trotted over to the Groix Inn, and where the Purple Emperor lived with his niece, and brought his microscope to bear on the rare newly captured butterfly, in hopes of detecting a fraud. but this specimen was genuine, and he leered through his microscope in vain. "No chemicals there, Admiral," grinned the Purple Emperor, and the Red Admiral chattered with rage. To the scientific world of Brittany and France, the capture of the Apatura iris in Morbihan was of great importance. The Museum of Quimper offered to purchase the butterfly, but the Purple Emperor, though a hardener of gold, was a monomaniac on butterflies, and he jeered at the curator of the museum. For all parts of Brittany and France, letters of inquiry and congratulation poured in upon him. The French Academy of Sciences awarded him a prize, and the Paris Entomological Society made him an honorary member. Being a Breton peasant, and a more than commonly pig-headed one at that, these honors did not disturb his equanimity. But when the little hamlet of St. Gildas elected him mayor, and, as in the custom of Brittany under such circumstances, he left his thatched house to take up an official life in the little Groix Inn, his head became completely turned. To be mayor in a village of nearly 150 people, it was an empire. So he became unbearable, drinking himself viciously drunk every night of his life, maltreating his niece, Liz Trevec, with the harbourous old wretch that he was, and driving the Red Admiral nearly frantic with his eternal harping on the capture of Apatura iris. Of course, he refused to tell where he had caught the butterfly. The Red Admiral stalked his footsteps, but in vain. "He!" nagged the Purple Emperor, cuddling his chin over a glass of cider. "I saw you sneaking about the St. Gildas spinning yesterday morning. So you think you can find another Apatura iris by running after me? It won't do, Admiral. It won't do, d'ye see?" The Red Admiral turned yellow with mortification and envy, but the next day he actually took to his bed, for the Purple Emperor had brought home not a butterfly, but a live chrysalis, which he successfully hatched, would become a perfect specimen of the invaluable Apatura iris. This was the last straw. The Red Admiral shut himself up in his little stone cottage, and for weeks now he had been invisible to everybody except fine Lilocard, who carried him a loaf of bread and a mullet or langouste every morning. The withdrawal of the Red Admiral from the Society of St. Gildas excited first the derision and finally the suspicion of the Purple Emperor. What deviltry could he be hatching? Was he experimenting with chemicals again, or was he engaged in some deeper plot by the object of which was to discredit the Purple Emperor? Rue, the postman, who carried the mail on foot once a day from Banalec, a distance of 15 miles each way, had brought several suspicious letters bearing English stamps to the Red Admiral, and the next day the Admiral had been observed at his window, grinning up into the sky and rubbing his hands together. A night or two after this apparition, the postman left 2 packages of the Groix Inn for a moment while he ran across the way to drink a glass of cider with me. The Purple Emperor, who was roaming about the cafe, snooping into everything that did not concern him, came upon the packages and examined the postmarks and addresses. One of the packages was square and heavy, and felt like a book. The other was also square, but very light, and felt like a pasteboard box. They were both addressing the Red Admiral, and they bore English stamps. When Rue, the postman, came back, the Purple Emperor tried to pump him, but the poor little postman knew nothing about the contents of the packages, and after he had taken them around the corner to the cottage of the Red Admiral, the Purple Emperor ordered a glass of cider and deliberately fuddled himself until Liz came in and tearfully supported him to his room. Here he became so abusive and brutal that Liz called to me, and I went and settled the trouble without wasting any words. This also the Purple Emperor remembered and waited his chance to get even with me. That happened a week ago, and until today he had not denied to speak to me. Liz had posed for me all week, and today being Saturday, and I lazy, we decided to take a little relaxation. So she to visit and gossip with her little black-eyed friend Yvette in the neighboring hamlet of St. Julian, and I to try the appetites of the Breton trout with the contents of my American fly hook book. I had thrashed the stream very conscientiously for 3 hours, but not a trout had risen to my cast, and I was piqued. I had begun to believe that there were no trout in the St. Gildas stream, and would probably have given up had I not seen the sea trout snap the little fly which the Purple Emperor had named so scientifically. That set me thinking. Probably the Purple Emperor was right, for he certainly was an expert in everything that crawled and wriggled in Brittany. So I matched from my American fly book. The fly and the sea trout had snapped up, and withdrawing the cast of 3, knotted a new leader to the silk and slipped a fly on the loop. It was a queer fly. It was one of those unnameable experiments which fascinate anglers in sporting stores, and which generally prove utterly useless. Moreover, it was a tailed fly, but of course I easily remedied that by the stroke of my penknife. Then I was all ready, and I stepped out to the hurrying rapids and cast straight as an arrow to the spot where the sea trout had risen. Lightly as a plume, the fly settled on the bosom of the pool. Then came a startling splash, a gleam of silver, and the line tightened from the vibrating rod tip to the shrieking reel. Almost instantly I checked the fish, and as he floundered for a moment, making the water boil along his glittering sides, I sprang to the bank again, and for I saw that the fish was a heavy one, and I should probably be in for a long run down the stream. The 5-ounce rod swept in a splendid circle, quivering under the strain. "Oh, for gaff hook!" I cried aloud, for I was now firmly convinced that I had a salmon to deal with, and no sea trout at all. Then as I stood, bringing every ounce to bear on the sulking fish, a lithe, slender girl came hurriedly along the opposite bank, calling out to me by name. "Why, Liz," I said, glancing up for a second, "I thought you were at St. Julian with Yvette." "Yvette has gone to Banalec. I went home and found an awful fight going on at the Groix Inn, and I was so frightened that I came to tell you." The fish dashed off at that moment, carrying all my line and my reel held, and I was compelled to follow him at a jump. Liz, active and graceful as young as a deer, in spite of her pont avance sabot, followed along the opposite bank until the fish settled in a deep pool, shook the line savagely once or twice, and then relapsed into the sulks. "Fight at the Groix Inn?" I called across the water. "What fight?" "Not exactly fight," quavered Liz, "but the Red Admiral has come out of his house at last, and he has my uncle are drinking together and disputing about butterflies. I never saw my uncle so angry, and the Red Admiral is sneering and grinning. Oh, it is almost wicked to see such a face." "But Liz," I said, scarcely able to repress a smile, "your uncle and the Red Admiral are always quarreling and drinking." "I know, oh dear me, but this is different, Monsieur Darrell. The Red Admiral has grown and fierce since he shut himself up 3 weeks ago, and oh dear, I never saw such a look in my uncle's eyes before. He seemed insane with fury. His eyes, I can't speak of it. And then Teddick came in." "Oh," I said more gravely, "that was fortunate. What did the Red Admiral say to his son?" Liz sat down on a rock among the ferns and gave me a mutinous glance from her blue eyes. Yves Terek, loafer, poacher, and son of Louis-Jean Terek, otherwise the Red Admiral, had been kicked out by his father and had also been forbidden the village by the Purple Emperor in his majestic capacity of mayor. Twice the young ruffian had returned, once to rifle the bedroom of the Purple Emperor, and unsuccessful enterprise, and another time to rob his own father. He succeeded in the latter attempt, but was never caught, along with his frequently seen roving about the forests and the moors with his gun. He openly menaced the Purple Emperor, vowed that he would marry Liz in spite of all the gendarmes and in Quimperlé. And these same gendarmes he led many a long chase through briar-filled swamps and over miles of yellow gorse. What he did to the Purple Emperor, what he intended to do, disquieted me a little, but I worried over his threat concerning Liz. During the last 3 months, this had bothered me a great deal, for when Liz came to St. Gilda's and from the convent, the first thing she captured was my heart. For a long time I had refused to believe that any tie of blood linked this dainty blue-eyed creature to the Purple Emperor. Although she dressed in a velvet-laced bodice and blue petticoat of Finistère, and wore the bewitching white coif in St. Gilda's, she seemed like a pretty masquerade. To me she was as sweet and as gentle-bred as many a maiden of noble faubourg, who danced with her cousins at Louis XV's fête champêtre. So when Liz said that Yves Terek had returned openly to St. Gilda's, I felt that I had better be there also. "What did Terek say, Liz?" I asked, watching the line vibrating above the placid pool. The wild rose color crept into her cheeks. "Oh," she answered with a little toss of her chin, "you know what he always says, that he will carry you away." "Yes." "In spite of the Purple Emperor, the Red Admiral, and the gendarmes?" "Yes." "And what do you say, Liz?" "I? Oh, nothing." "Then let me say it for you." Liz looked at her delicate pointed sabots, the sabots from Pont-Aven, made to order. They fitted her little foot. They were her only luxury. "Will you let me answer for you, Liz?" I asked. "You, Monsieur Darel?" "Yes, will you let me give him his answer?" "Mon Dieu, why should you concern yourself, Monsieur Darel?" The fish lay very quiet, but the rod in my hand trembled. "Because I love you, Liz." The wild rose color in her cheeks deepened. She gave a little gasp, then hid her curly head in her hands. "I love you, Liz." "Do you know what you say?" she stammered. "Yes, I love you." She raised her sweet face and looked at me across the pool. "I love you," she said, while the tears stood like stars in her eyes. "Shall I come over the brook to you?" And that is the end of chapter 1, and the end for tonight. Have a good evening, everyone.